Hi, Josh.
Hi, Sufi.
We're going to start with a disclaimer today because we recorded some of our episodes of Family Trips before the Screen Actors Guild went on strike. We're very supportive of both the Writers Guild and Screen Actors Guild. Not just supportive, but members, right, Josh?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not WGA, but I am SAG.
Are you not WGA?
Yeah, I don't know how that's happened, but that's the truth.
We would really love to have you.
Well, I'm waiting. I'm waiting for a call.
So anyway, we're very supportive of the strikes, and we're very respectful for the strike rules, one of which is not to have members of the Guild promote their work on things like podcasts. Some of our guests recorded this before the strike, and so we just want to make sure that you know that that was a thing that happened before the strike took place.
And that's on the up and up.
That's on the up and up.
But moving forward, we won't be talking about people's work or projects that are about to come out or past.
We're just going to talk about their family trips, because until the Family Trips Guild goes on strike, we're good.
I just want to talk about more family trips. And sometimes when we get into the weeds talking about people's TV shows.
You actually were almost about to go on podcast strike because you didn't like when people were talking about their projects.
Yeah, I mean, yawn. I feel like go to another podcast or like watch someone on the Today Show and see them talk about their movies. This is where we talk about family trips.
These new strike rules are very in line with your vision for the podcast.
Yeah, and I'm glad that I didn't have to really throw my weight around to get my way.
Your current attitude, I don't know if we want you in the Writers Guild anymore.
Oh, wow. You didn't play that card.
All right, everybody. That was a rambling disclaimer. We support the actors, we support the writers, and we hope you support Family Trips with the Meyers brothers. Here we go. A very exciting episode today.
Yeah, old pal.
Old pal, the first guest on our show that we've actually gone on a trip with.
It didn't go great for him.
It didn't go great for him. I will say that Colin Jost, who is our guest today, is one of the most unsinkable people I've ever had the pleasure of hanging out with. And I also feel like that trip was the closest I ever saw to him being totally sunk.
Yeah. But he does have sort of that sense of humor where even he can see how funny a terrible situation is in the moment. But yeah, he was delirious.
He was delirious. I mean, I think we're going to go into the details, so I don't want to spoil it, but we came very close to losing Colin Jost. He would have been, the world would have been robbed of his time as a weekend update anchor. We almost lost him in a Helsinki graveyard.
Yeah. He was almost, as they say, he was almost finished.
Oh, how dare. How dare you get there before me? I had every expectation of saying that tomorrow Mom and Dad were going to come visit me and my family, but then they heard a month later you were coming. And so they canceled their trip because Mom and Dad would rather be somewhere that you were.
Yeah.
They didn't want to be here a month before you were here.
Right. And when the opportunity to be there with me presented itself, they jumped on that.
So now we're a month away before we can report back to how my parents' visit here was. And I'm very happy, I should note. I like when our entire family's together. I think you're an extra set of eyes and ears on Mom and Dad that can be helpful.
Sure.
I also think, we've discussed maybe the biggest, because I should stress that this will be Mom and Dad with my wife's parents, Tom and Joanne, who I love.
Yeah.
But they will be basically not just visiting me, but my in-laws. And how would you describe, this I think is the trickiest thing every time Mom and Dad visit with my in-laws. How would you describe the way my wife's family says it's time to go to the beach?
Well, you'll be like sitting on the porch, just chatting, and you will have been out there for maybe, I don't know, an hour, 45 minutes. Maybe you have a cup of coffee. And then suddenly someone bangs outside and says, "We need to be in the car in 2 minutes and ready to go." And you really just wonder why. Maybe somebody could have given us a heads up. And there's an issue with like permits and we need to be in a certain number of cars. And it's like all of a sudden tragedy befalls an otherwise sort of peaceful moment. And you scramble as fast as you can because you don't want to be the one who's caused
the delay. And also it should be noted, you and I, having spent our entire lives with them, know full well that mom and dad have never done anything in 2 minutes.
No.
So just watching them look for glasses.
Yeah. But I mean, well, I do that now too. Once you start wearing glasses, you'll know what it's like.
I know now from experience, my wife's family is capable of giving more warning than 2 minutes. So we just have to try to get ahead of them. We have to try to predict when crisis is going to begin.
Yeah. I also feel like on a trip like this, I've done some work. I've written a bunch of commercials, and I'll be on set for when those commercials shoot. And it's kind of like a trip like this where I've got your in-laws and mom and dad, because as that sort of writer, I will bounce between like the actor in the spot, the ad agency, and the client. And I'll just be like, yeah, these idiots don't know what they're doing. Like, and I am a friend to all, and I sell everyone out, but I will be an ear to listen to your qualms. And then I'll go to team B and I'll be like, team A, they're
so the thing you want to stress is that if you're ever talking to Josh and Josh is saying, yeah, I agree with you, they're idiots over there, just know that the next time you see him talking to a different group, you're the idiot now.
Yeah. It's appeasement, full scale. And,
I like that you're being honest about it, because sometimes you just need an appeaser. You're very good at this. I should note, in my in-laws' defense, we are always rushing to the beach. And if you don't rush to the beach, much like a train or an airplane, it will leave. And then you get there and there's just no beach.
Yeah.
So it's, you might be like, why would you rush if it's just going to be there anyway? You just don't understand the beach.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to visit. And I'm very happy you're going to be there for all of it. And I'm also looking forward for everybody listening now to hear our conversation with Colin Jost. This is Family Trips. And this is Jeff Tweedy, basically echoing what I just said.
Family Trips with the Meyers brothers. Family Trips with the Meyers brothers. Here we go.
Well, if it isn't our old friend Colin Jost.
I feel like I just foolishly thought I should wear a Hawaiian shirt for a travel, and then immediately was like, oh, it's audio.
Yeah, that's a podcast.
Right.
I should know I love you a great deal, and I'm aware of the fact that when you show up, I will always forget how long you've kept me waiting. But on the list of ways you've kept me waiting, hearing that he'll be here soon for the podcast, he's changing his outfit for a podcast.
You never know. I mean, sometimes it's about dressing for the part you want.
Dress for the podcast you want to be a guest on.
I was also thinking, my hair, I was going to be like, oh no, my hair is wet. Again, not an issue. But then I remember at work, coming to work a lot. I don't know if you remember, with wet hair. And I realized it was a period of my life where I would go swimming before SNL, which was, I couldn't believe those things were possible now in life.
Yes.
But I went to my local YMCA, swam 100 laps, and then came to SNL to write with wet hair.
You were a very young writer on the show who I felt like was living the life of someone 50 years older than you. It was a very Don Drapery existence of waking up in your New York City apartment. You would go to the Y, you would swim laps, and then show up to the office.
It was just a better life, It's been downhill. Once you can't even swim before work, it's like, why are we even doing it?
Were you self-conscious about coming to work with wet hair? Was that something?
It never crossed my mind.
Oh yeah, you shouldn't have been.
It was pointed out to me. But,
okay.
I should note, Colin was the least self-conscious person I've ever worked with. Colin was always very late. I remember SNL show is shot on the 8th floor, but the offices are on the 17th floor. And one time we called Jost, and asked him to come down to Higgins' office on 8, one of the producers, Steve Higgins. And he said, I'll be right down. And then it took an hour for him to come down. And when he came in, Higgins threw all the papers in the air like the Flash had just come in. Like you'd come in so fast that you blew the papers off his desk.
I also got my I combed my hair again. Another wasted podcast thing. I was like, I should comb my hair, and I got my first. I never had a comb. This also might not shock you. I never owned a comb. I got my 3 weeks ago. I was handed on the street. This is true. My first comb, and there's a man I run into in my neighborhood who owns a hair store, hair salon.
No,
Sure.
hair store. I think they're called hair stores.
He doesn't sell hair. He runs a hair salon. Very nice gentleman. And I run into him. He'd always say hi. He's very nice. And then like 3 weeks ago, he handed me a comb and was like, I wanted to give you a comb. I don't know. Totally know why now. And I started the last couple weeks. I've been like experimenting with a comb, and I realized that it's, I would just use my fingers.
Yeah.
And now I realize that a comb is like 100 fingers.
It is a lot of fingers. It's a lot of tiny fingers.
Like I had been using all these years, I had been combing my hair with an ant, and then I was handed a centipede.
Wow. Mm. This breaks my heart that we have not arranged to have a comb sponsor, because it would have been one of the most seamless ad transitions ever on a podcast. Now, I have often thought that you are sort of leading a very blessed life. And now the very fact that a man just hands you a comb on your walk, just another drop in the bucket of luck that has blessed Colin Jost.
Do you carry it around in your back pocket like Grease style?
It's one of those ones that you press a button and it flips out like a switchblade.
Oh, yeah. A switch comb.
And you also carry a switchblade because you're constantly mugged. And now my question is, have you accidentally pulled the comb when you've wanted to pull the switchblade?
And it was actually one of the greatest makeovers of both of our lives, that criminal.
Oh, I did. I recently saw a mugger who just had the most beautifully combed hair. I'm assuming that.
No, maybe related.
Hey, Jost, you did wear a Hawaiian shirt for our. Yes. Right now, Jost, for the listeners, because he has put so much work into his appearance, looks like a young Magnum PI, but with headphones instead of a mustache. Jost, this podcast is called Family Trips, and we're talking about family vacations. And I have been very lucky over the years. I've met everybody in your family. I met your younger brother, Casey. You and Casey, 4 years difference?
3.
3 years. So
are you guys 4?
We're 2.
2. Okay.
I met your parents. You famously are from Staten Island. What were your early? I know the big one, but when you think about the family trips you took, what pops into mind?
My family only did. We had 2 trips that we did for my entire life, which was one was Disney World, and the other was we would just drive around national parks, like all out west. We would just drive with often seemingly no destination, drive around to national parks. So I basically went to every national park that there is out west and Disney World. And those are the only places we went.
That seems like 2 very opposite ends of the spectrum. Do you think your parents were aware that if we're going to give them Disney World once a year, we should also national park it?
Yeah, maybe that's the educational part or something is national parks. My parents, my mom's never left the country. Like she's never been outside of the country, which is kind of shocking. I didn't realize till later in life. And then I would always be like, I can't believe you've never gone anywhere. And she's like, well, I've seen the entire world at the World Pavilion at Epcot Center. Which I'm sure if you're from any nation and you've visited your nation at Epcot, you think we are represented. This is us.
Well represented. Now, being from Staten Island, do you feel like she considers it international travel just to sort of leave, just to visit Manhattan?
Just to see Brooklyn.
Any mainland.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from, but it was like not even Canada. She had never like driven up to Canada. Or done, I don't know where it came from.
She seems like a very worldly person. I should know.
I know.
You're
She does.
a
She
doctor,
is. She's-
Dr. Jost. Let's stress this is a
Yeah.
a very worldly, very
Dr.
educated
Kelly.
woman.
Dr. Kelly. She kept her maiden name, so even more worldly. So
Dr. Kelly, interesting.
yeah.
What's her
Dr.
first
Kelly.
name? What's your mom's first name?
Carrie. So Carrie Kelly.
Gotcha.
Not gonna believe it. Irish. I was gonna wait till the end to spoil it. The
And
end of the
hasn't been to
podcast.
Ireland?
And no, has never been. to
Oh
Ireland.
yeah, that's a trip. We did that last summer with our parents, and yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
I really want my grandpa is turning 98, and his whole side is Irish firefighters, and he's never been either. So I'm almost thinking, can we try to somehow get him on a plane and go to? Obviously it happens, but
No, you should try to trick them. I think
And a
trick them.
plane is the way to go. Like if
hey,
you're gonna
say
do
if
it,
you're-
Grandpa, look, it's a car. No, it's just a car. Get in.
They say old people who've never traveled internationally should be tricked to get over the hump. We went
Yeah.
to Ireland last summer, Jost, and Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're with my mom and dad, and my mom just constantly asking, could never be in the present without asking 1,000 questions about what the future holds. Always asking what's next. And we get into a taxi, and we've been telling her all day what we're doing. And we get into a taxi, and she goes, now wait, let me know everything. What are everything we're going to do the rest of the day? And the taxi driver, the most Irish things ever, he goes, I'll tell you what you're going to do. Step 1, we're going to go to a pub. Step 2, you're going to stop asking so many fucking questions.
yeah, that was pretty accurate.
Immediately clocked that this woman asked too many questions.
It was the first time you guys had been to Ireland too, or had you been there?
I had never been there. And yeah, we went to Northwestern. Our parents met at Northwestern, and Northwestern was playing Nebraska in college football in Dublin for this sort of annual game where they get a couple college teams over there. So we, Seth got some flights, my parents got some hotels, and I bought some tickets to the game, and we went and I played golf with my parents for like 4 days beforehand. And yeah, it was so lovely. The people were so nice. The service is so mediocre, but they're so pleasant that you're just like, oh, it's fine. Like, it's fine if you forgot an entree, or it's fine if drinks took forever, because they're all so sweet and charming and nice. And yeah, it was great.
I just flew in for the game, Jost, and Josh had just spent 4 days golfing with both my parents, and I showed up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to party. And Josh, because he'd been alone with my parents for 4 days, had like the 1,000-yard stare of a recently returned veteran from a foreign war. He'd been through it.
They often compare golf to that experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good for some backup to show up. It's always nice.
Remember, we were in Scotland together, and I was like, oh, I wonder if there's golf here.
Oh yeah, you did. You asked,
I wonder if
and then you
I
found
was like,
out.
I wonder if golf is big here. Genuinely asking.
I had to take that Scottish man aside after he rolled his eyes at you, and I said, you have to realize this is a man who's not going to find out about combs for another 10 years. I do want to get to our travels, because we have taken some friends for me are like family, and we've taken some trips together, Colin. And I want to get to that. But
Yes.
so
yeah.
I want to get to Disney, but did you look forward to the national parks vacations as well as a kid?
I did. I mean, it was we did just a lot of hiking, which I liked somehow. I can't imagine as a kid you would really like doing that, but I did like it. And we rode horses around like the edges of the up and down the Grand Canyon and stuff. Things that seemed very unsafe. And I don't know if they are or not, but it was like the tiniest ledge, and you were going. But it didn't at the time faze me. And we would drive. I mean, the bummer is sometimes without a plan, they would be like, I heard there's, a crater near here. We got to go see this. And then we would drive 4 hours to a crater in the middle of the desert it was like a fence around a crater, and you would look at it, and then they'd be like, there anything else to do, like a roller coaster with it, or no? And you would just drive back to the nearest other park.
Yeah, I think I've driven into the parking lot for that crater and then was like, I'm turning around.
I don't know. I need to go all the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're driving, obviously, a rental car, and
Yeah.
you and your brother Casey.
No, we always bought.
You'd land and buy.
Yeah, we would drive out to the west, but then we would buy a new car.
Yeah.
No,
And
we
your mom would be like, "Look, we don't travel internationally. We have money for cars. You travel domestically, you buy a new car every time."
Yep. And it was take a car, leave a car in the crater.
You leave it in the crater.
It's car crater.
Car crater. Are you guys,
I would go
mentioned
see a
that?
crater full of cars. If someone
Sure.
said it's a 4-hour drive to see a place called Crater Full of Cars, I would go.
Yeah, there's that like airplane graveyard out in the desert somewhere, but I think car crater would be better than airplane graveyard.
Certainly seems like there'd be fewer fatalities getting the vehicles in the crater versus airplane graveyard. Someone like jumping out last minute when it lands.
They don't crash it in the desert. It's
Oh,
old
okay.
planes. Yeah.
They're
They
lined
drive
up and
them
they don't bury them with
They
with the little
drive them
headstones.
to the desert. Yeah, right.
Look, we don't have all the answers about airplane graveyard.
So
We
you would
just know it's
be in a
appealing.
car or you'd be in an RV? What are you getting
also,
around it?
speaking of car crater, someone told me recently that out in Montauk at the surf break, that at some point in like the 50s to just make the surf break better, they drove like 50 cars into the ocean, and they're just out there under the water. Is that true?
What's you asking us?
Could that be true? I don't know.
I think it could be true. I think, you know what? Maybe it's more fun if it is true. I will say cars in the ocean does seem like a real hippie surfer plan for how to improve the break.
It actually sounds to me like America was so wealthy in the 50s that you could just drive loose cars into the ocean, and we were so prosperous as a nation it didn't even register.
Do you remember traveling well? And when you're on a 4-hour drive, is it everybody talking in the car? Is it you and Casey talking in the back seat? How did you spend the time? Like, we were a book on tape family.
We fought a lot, pretty aggressively physically fought. We were also, I just remembering this, we would bite pieces of the car, the headrest behind my parents and my grandpa. Like my grandpa would drive us around, and we would bite pieces out of the headrest of the headrest of their like 1970s Volvo, and at the point that they noticed, we had basically eaten the headrest down to the metal wire in the bottom of the head. So there was like the top of the headrest was intact, and the bottom was just a metal piece that used to have foam and leather or whatever.
Now, my question would be, to what end?
I don't know. I'm just remembering this, and I don't know. I don't remember what the purpose. We were definitely, based on photos of how heavy we were, it was not for sustenance. We never wanted for food. This wasn't a child services intervention issue. I think it was like boredom at that time before you could have a video game or something, that we just decided, let's see how far we could get eating the headrest of the car.
And so would it be both? Would it be the driver and the sort of shotgun?
We both worked at them, and maybe it was almost a competition.
Yeah, that's
to
what
see
I'm thinking.
who got to the wire the fastest.
Did you always have like your seat? Were you always behind the driver?
I thought you were gonna say, did you always have bigger teeth? Did that help you? Yeah, so we always had a side, and it was just a side. I don't know which was better. I think I was behind the driver's side as the older brother. Did you guys have that?
I don't remember.
I don't recall. Yeah.
Now, I have a couple of things. One, an observation that seatbelts used to be worse if you could lean all the way forward and chew at the headrest behind.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but the seatbelt was always, you'd immediately take the shoulder thing and be like, this is uncomfortable, so you put it behind your head.
There you go.
Like, behind your whole body, which I think defeated the purpose of the
I don't even
shoulder.
think we had shoulder straps in the back seats. I feel like we just had little lap band things.
I do think this is us being a tick older than Jost. I think you might be right. Shoulder straps were for his golden generation. But Jost, here's my other thing, because sometimes now, being a parent, you'll catch your kids doing something that makes you angry, But then there's something like this where it both makes you angry and it makes you question everything about your kids. Like if I saw that they were chewing the headrest, I would both be mad because the headrest had been chewed, but then I would be so worried about the future that I had sort of headrest eating kids. What was your
Wouldn't
what
you
was the
also
reaction?
kind of start to question yourself as a parent?
I mean,
you give this kid something else to chew on?
I know
Dog treat?
Alexi would immediately tell me why a thing I had done had led to the kids eating the headrests.
And you might, I mean, at that point, you almost would have to believe it because it doesn't seem like innate behavior. It seems learned.
Right. It does seem learned. But what was the reaction when they found you being...
I think it was so crazy they couldn't even be angry. I think they were genuinely, I mean, maybe that was the period where we went to therapy together. But I really don't remember. I think their reaction was so... I think it was also a little bit for them because we started at the back, the part they didn't see. So by the time we got through to the point they discovered it, it was almost like the Shawshank discovering that behind the poster was a whole tunnel that they had dug. And I think they were almost like impressed that we had gotten this far into eating the headrest.
There was that moment in Shawshank where the warden realizes it and he turns, looks directly at camera and nods like, pretty impressive.
Hey, okay. Yeah, that was...
Did you and Casey go to therapy together?
We did. We did at some point. I think because we were just so like fighting so violently. I don't know why either. And we get along great now, but we really were. And I remember in my mind, we went to like one thing of therapy to like a therapist who was just 10 doors down, who I feel like it was an Irish cat. You would no one I knew ever went to therapy. So I feel like my parents were like, we have to try something, and just brought us to someone down the street. And we went into their house, and I truly, that's my memory of therapy, but I think it was a therapist, but I don't know. And I think we just talked for a little while, and he was like, yeah, it's not that bad. And then that was therapy. That's my memory of therapy.
Did either of you, when you're fighting in the back of a car, driving from national park to national park, any injuries, any like sustained injuries of note? Because it sounds like you guys are going at it pretty good.
I broke my wrist at some point. I was like, I'll race you down a mountain, and then tripped and, fell and hit and it broke my wrist. But I'm sure there was lots of emotional damage, but yeah, I don't know. There was no real injuries. I mean, my grandma definitely had a heart attack, which I think counts as an injury, but on like a mountain in Colorado. And I remember we had to like get her, figure out a way to get her down a mountain into a hospital. That was kind of a crazy thing, but that was, I think, unrelated to us.
Let's hope so.
I don't know. We never got to the bottom of it, where it came from. Yes.
Maybe that was the day your mom told her about the headrests.
The day she looked behind she was always in the passenger seat back then,
right.
So she never.
Did you go on vacations with your grandparents a lot as well?
We went. They came out to the national park, so we went like the six of us, my parents and my parents and me and my brother and my grandparents, which was really fun. And,
so which side grandparents were those?
My mom's parents. So my mom's parents lived next door to us growing up. So we lived.
Got it. It
was like a full Everyone Loves Raymond setup where they lived next door. And so we would basically, I think my mom was like, we have to bring them because otherwise they'll just be home alone. So we went, I'm sure they would have been very happy to just be hanging out alone, but they came on every trip. So it was all of us driving around. Did they enjoy it?
Do you think they liked going to national parks as well and liked being with you and Casey?
I think so. I think they loved it. I mean, again, they also never, it was like the only travel they did. Like no one ever left Staten Island. So this was like their getaway.
And would you camp? Would you stay in like a little motel, or what was your setup?
It was a mix. We camped a little. We would stay. It was like, motels and lodges that were around at the different parks, whatever it was there. We kind of just bounced around.
Adjoining rooms?
Yeah, no, we were in the same room as my parents. My grandparents were in another. It wasn't like a fully Willy Wonka, 4 in a bed, opposite legs, but we were opposite legs. I think as they describe that.
That's how it was in
I
the
really-
stage directions.
I really tried writing a sketch. I think it even aired, but I tried writing a sketch that was the 4 Willy Wonka grandparents in a bed, and then 2 of them start trying to have sex. And there was, and then the others were like panicking, like, oh no. And I think we did it, but there was like a whole thing where they were like, we really have to stage the sex so it doesn't look like they're having sex. It was like just useless.
Yeah. I like that you said I tried to write something. I think it actually aired. I do think that is the outcome of a lot of SNL sketches, which is it aired. It's not the thing I tried to write.
No, but it did air.
It did air.
America was able to watch it. But.
So I remember just the Disney part of this. So I remember you saying this, and I thought it was a joke at first, but you went to Disney every year, and you continued to do that.
Yes.
As an adult.
Yes. The most the craziest one is that there was a whole group, a whole college group that got invited to go to the Playboy Mansion for like a weekend of. It was like Hugh Hefner invited all the writers for whatever thing. And instead of going to that, I went to Disney World with my parents and my grandparents. And I really don't understand why, but I thought it was important or something that I should go
Tradition.
with my family. Tradition. I'm like, oh, why?
And this is an unbroken streak? I mean, obviously, you've had years off at some point.
I did take some adult years off, but I definitely went. I remember going as an adult a few times. I don't know, again, why, but... And then we've now, with kids, we've now gone the last, I'd say 3 or 4 years we've gone, that's been really fun to go with a purpose instead of to see joy in others instead of confusion in your own eyes.
But did you love it as a kid? Did that, was it the best?
Yes. And it was, we loved everything. We loved like learning about how there were underground tunnels and how no one had technically ever died at Disney because if you died, they like moved the body to another location. And they were like, oh, I guess they died in St. Pete or whatever. I don't know if they moved them 200 miles, but
I like that someone thought there was a serial killer who was just murdering random people with mouse ears in different parts of Florida.
Yeah, but things like that. We liked all the weird finding out whatever the dark sides of Disney were too.
And when you would go to Disney, would you always be sort of in the park, or would you do adjacent activities as well, or was it fully...
It was like 6 a.m. up, park till midnight, and then go home and sleep for a couple hours, eat a waffle on the bus to the park, like a Disney Year's waffle. It was like maximizing the 3 days there, like wall to wall.
Did you have a favorite ride?
You know me. For me, traditional Splash Mountain. Why change it?
If it ain't
Wait,
broke.
finally someone asked me. That's why I did this podcast. I would say, Space Mountain seems like an easy one to say, but I loved Space Mountain, and I would throw up on the teacups like every time. I'm a big motion sickness person, but I still had an affinity for it that brought me back.
So you would throw up on the actual ride during it or after?
A mix. I think I got a handful. I got off.
And would Casey not want to ride with you knowing that? Or was it ride or die?
I think Casey continued to be tricked into doing it again, thinking it was. He was a loving younger brother, as I'm sure, Josh, you can attest. It was like, my brother invited me into the cup again. We got to do it.
Yeah, I would. There was rarely a time, if ever, I ever would have turned something like that down, an offer from Seth.
Can't say no to the cup.
It's great to be waiting in line and seeing a kid running off, puking on the ground, and then send your own kids in.
You're famously married to Scarlett Johansson, and she is in Marvel films. Marvel, of course, owned by Disney. I'm assuming that means when you go now, you are getting
half off.
That's it. Nice. I thought it'd be so much more, just a half off.
70% off on food because they don't. I mean, it's not all like the pretzels aren't. Some of those are imported,
right?
Like the thing again when you get to the World Pavilion, tariffs change everything. You know what I mean?
You're not even in Disney. You're just in the world. That's not
You're
Disney.
you're out in the world. I mean,
Yep.
if you've gotten your passport stamped with each drink that you've had at different places, it's a different world. Yes, we're treated very very nicely, and we get to see like the backs of rides and stuff. It's very exciting.
So now, obviously, I hope that for me, when I go to a park, I have not gone to Disney or Universal. Like, for example, Universal, which is the company that you and I work for now. They have some of these theme parks. I'd hope for that. But my question is, do you feel as a kid, you growing up waiting in line was character building? Doing an hour for a roller coaster, was it character building? And do you think it made the ride better having waited that long?
I do think so. I don't care now, but I do think that is true. Disney, the whole line is such a great experience, and you see things, and then you go to I remember going to Six Flags in New Jersey, and you'd be waiting for the Batman ride, and it was just like a chain link fence with graffiti, and they're like, let's do that part of Gotham. Let's just make sure people feel like they're really in the worst section of Gotham for 2 hours while you're waiting, and that was less maybe fun. But Disney, obviously, they have a great setup, and I do think it's character building because you learned about patience, you learned about building an expectation, and then even if the ride is 3 minutes or whatever, and you waited 2 hours, you were so excited for those 3 minutes that I think it made it feel special. So I do think I do think it's valuable. Would I ever go back? Absolutely not.
No, I guess my question is, let's say I go to, one of the Universal theme parks.
Yes.
And the special treatment, let's be honest, is due to my accomplishments. It has nothing to do with anything my children have done. Do you think it's okay if I skip the line, go straight to the ride, but in order for my kids to have the experience I had, I get a second sort of guide for them that's
a
just
second
the full
set,
2
like
hours.
a higher second, like a stand-in parents.
Yeah, so they have to do the
who are a
whole-
little mean too, a little on edge, right?
little over it. Yeah.
Because they've been waiting in lines all day, so you got to get different, fake parents that are a little.
And look, at the end of the day, they get their regular parents back. But
yeah, but they've got like little Flask, they're a little all over the place, right?
I think ideally, I think you'd be able to ask, this is what I'd like. I mean, so if it's me, if I want them to have the same experience I had, I would say, yeah, I think the mom, because Josh, our mom, what does she say when she gets too hot, if the sun's too hot?
Oh, she gets the flux.
Do you know what the flux is?
From
Jost?
Back to the Future? Is this
We'd
all
have no
gonna be
idea.
Universal plugs?
We have no idea.
No,
The
I had her ask her doctor. She was like going for a physical. I was like, hey, tell the doctor that you get the flux because I don't think it's a real thing. Someone needs to address this.
Is that like a modern version of the vapors?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. By modern, like 40 years ago. And the Vapors is 60.
I think the kids should have to wait in lines. But I mean, it's like if you have a first class plane ticket, your kid should be in the bathroom in the back. You know what I mean? They should earn it.
Yeah, they should earn it. I would imagine. So, again, I think the nice thing about being at Disney is the celebrities are the actual Disney characters. They're walking around. They're drawing the eye. Can you and Scarlett actually have a sort of lower key existence there? Can you get away with being who you are?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key is you just kind of keep moving.
Sure.
You have a hat, you kind of keep moving. And I think the nice thing is everyone's so distracted by their own children going crazy that it's not, it's kind of an ideal environment. Like no one's ever looking up. Everyone's always looking down in panic.
Right.
So it's a good place to kind of like weave in and out and, and we'll do a limited park time and also do some just either pool or some other downtime now, which I do appreciate compared to my previous experiences.
Have you been to any of the international Disney locations? Or do you got a wish list?
Yes, the first time I ever went to Paris, I went to travel with a friend who had like a place to stay, and I was like, oh my god, we got to go to Disney, which whatever, it was for another 20-year-old friend was who was like, I don't know that that's what we need to do here, but I was like, we have to go. So we went there, which I loved. I just love the detail because Space Mountain there, if I remember correctly, it's like a Jules Verne store. I actually don't know which book it is of Jules Verne, but you're like shot out of a giant gun into space at Space Mountain, which I thought was kind of a cool French twist on Space Mountain. So I've been there. I think that's the only international one. And then a great surprise that we did for our daughter Rose also was my parents, when we were out in the national parks and we were so tired of hiking through national parks, they drove to Disney World in LA as a surprise, didn't tell us, and pulled up to Disney. They were like, first of all, the whole time they were like, see where we are? And it was like signs that said Los Angeles. And we were like, that means nothing to us. And they're like, probably know what we're getting close to. No, had no idea. And then we got to Disney World and we freaked out when we were like 8 and 10 or whatever. That was a great surprise that we did.
I mean, to be fair, it's hard to like look at, highway signs when your mouth's full of headrest foam.
Well, I'm sure at least it was an era where, the materials were safe. Definitely weren't tripping.
In case people get upset, I think you did say that's Disney World, but that's Disneyland.
I'm sorry, you're right. Yeah. I'm sorry.
I just don't want people.
I spelled it out like Disney World, but I say them opposite a lot. I say Disneyland.
I think you guys are wrong. I think Disney superfans are really chill about that mistake.
They know a lot of pros make that all the time.
Josh, will you please ask Colin our Disney questions?
If you had the middle seat on an airplane, what 2 Disney characters would you most want to be in between?
I think Goofy Pluto, right?
Yeah, Goofy would be pretty fun.
Because then the whole time you're just like, guys, stop it. You guys.
That's like a Southwest flight going to Vegas.
Yeah.
That's full on.
You never believe it. I'm between Goofy and Pluto.
Better on the way there than the way home. That's Vegas,
the Burbank to Vegas flight. Yeah.
Oof, that's rough.
Yeah, Goofy and Pluto, which because then you're like, which one of you's a dog? You're both dogs.
Yeah. Try to get to the bottom of it by the end of the flight.
That's fine. And then you look like the consummate gentleman, right?
Yeah,
you're like, I'm sorry about these 2. They're not with me.
They ordered me this Jack and Coke. I didn't. I was going to wait. I don't want this.
Sorry for the digression.
No, please.
I remember
we'll get back to this. Go. You go.
I was thinking of drooling on a plane, and I remember I was on a plane. I was talking to someone who was a man from Portugal. We were talking, and I was like, I was like, oh, like football, like that was the only word I kind of knew.
Football?
Football. Like, I was like, isn't that how you say football, but in Portuguese? And he was like, oh, you know some Portuguese? And I was like, no, I just saw that on a shirt, and I think that's how it's pronounced. That was our conversation, whatever. We're talking. And then, like, at some point, I fell asleep on the plane, and I remember I woke up, and my belt was undone. Belt was undone, and I woke up and it wasn't like my pants were undone, just my belt was undone. And I remember waking up and I was like, this, because I didn't think anything happened, but I just like it was probably like my belt broke. I don't know, but I remember it was like undone, and I was just like, I didn't really know I didn't know how to say like what happened here, because I didn't feel anything had happened. But because if it would happen, I think he would have. And he put the pants back on, he would have also put the belt back on, right? But
right.
It was just the belt undone. And I just remembered it now. Like, oh, that was a weird moment.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Unless in Portugal, futebol is a game where you try to undo someone's belt surreptitiously.
Without them noticing.
Oh, yeah.
Futebol is, can you take off a person's belt without them waking up?
It's like in the old days where you would take someone's hat while they were sleeping. That's how they would know they could get to you, right? Maybe that's the Portuguese equivalent.
Yeah.
So for any Portuguese listeners, you guys will write in and you'll tell us.
Please do.
Right.
And now I'm going to digress off the digression. We went on vacation, the three of us, excuse me. We went on vacation. We were in Helsinki, and we had a very late night in Helsinki, and we lost you, Jost. And on the way back to the hotel,
I should point out and brag about you, which was the reason we went to Helsinki was that Seth ran a full marathon.
I did.
Full, Olympic standard 26.2, the alleged distance between the city of Marathon and the city of Athens, I want to say, maybe.
Yeah.
That distance, right?
You're bragging, but I also want to note that you did a very unkind thing. You wrote about this in your excellent book, A Very Punchable Face.
Yes.
And you printed where I finished. And I think I finished 14,000th.
No, you finished. I feel like you were top 350.
No.
Really?
No way I was in the top 4,000. Anyway.
Well, I thought you had a good time. I thought you were like under 3 hours.
Over 4. What is going on? Did you write this book? Are we going to find out that you had the ghostwriter? The same
Impressed
ghostwriter?
that anyone was running a marathon.
I had Prince Harry ghostwrite mine.
Ah, because he was free.
He was
available.
He was free. Yeah.
Somebody was writing his, so he
He's
wrote
like,
yours.
all right.
They always say that with ghostwriters, you pay it forward. But again,
you ran so Seth ran. Yes. We went to Helsinki. You ran a full marathon.
Yep.
That day. I remember Andy and I, Sandberg was there. We ran into the marathon with you we ran about 100 yards to cheer you on. Then we stopped winded after truly like 100 yards. Then we went to the table that had water for the marathoners and took water because we were out of breath from running for that long, cheering you on. Then we went out to celebrate that night. You had run a full marathon, yet you were able to go drink, have a night out, keep your wits about you far more than we were.
And then you walked home and you fell asleep in.
Well, and I remember Josh and I don't know if Josh remembers the conversation he and I had there at the party. We were at this bar, and Josh was talking to a girl, and I didn't know if Josh was interested in this girl or this girl was interested in Josh. From a distance, I was like, I'm going to be a perfect wingman and set up Josh. So I go over to Josh and this girl that he's talking to who's from Helsinki, and I go, do you know who you're talking to right now? And she was like, no. And I was like, you're talking to Gerald Ford Jr. That was what, in my state, I thought the perfect brag.
Oh, yeah.
Because then she'd be like, oh my God, it's like a Kennedy, but it's I'm talking to Gerald Ford Jr. I don't know to this day if that's a person. I don't know. No idea. I was like, you're talking to the Gerald Ford Jr. And I thought like, oh my God, now she's going to be starstruck, and then I also not even sure if you wanted her to be starstruck. That was in my mind. And then she immediately, this Finnish woman immediately goes, you're Gerald Ford Jr.? And you were like, yes, I am, like playing along with it. And she was like, why aren't you doing something to stop the state of politics in America right now? Launched into a diatribe about how you have the power to stop it. You should be making a difference right now and shouldn't be here drinking in a bar. Completely backfired my effort to build you up to this random Finnish woman. I don't know if you recall that.
I don't remember that, but I'm shocked that you remember it based on where you ended up that night.
Yes.
And I should say, if Gerald Ford Jr. exists and is listening, everything that woman said is true. And and this is the moment we're holding you accountable. Yes. Because Jost, as Josh pointed out,
yes,
it is impressive that you remember that because you did end up asleep in a graveyard.
I started walking home alone. I was like, I'll see you guys later. Very bad move. Very bad 2 a.m. move to leave a bar in Finland, a place you've never been till that day, and say, I'm going to go alone, walk back alone in the night to the hotel. Started walking back, got very tired on my walk back. And then I decided the best move would be I would sleep in a park for a little while. I saw a park. I thought, what if I just sleep for a little while? Then I'll have this energy when I wake up to continue my trip back to our hotel.
Perfect plan. No holes.
perfect plan normally. I went to sleep. I woke up what I thought was like, 6 hours later, and looked up and saw a headstone, like a tombstone that was next to me, and realized that I had not fallen asleep in a random park, but had fallen asleep in a Finnish graveyard, probably on a grave. And then
odds are,
when you see a tombstone, the overwhelming odds are that there's a grave. They're rarely just for show. And then, well, except Disney.
That's true.
Yeah.
Unless
Mansion.
that's where they put the bodies at the haunted mansion. We don't know.
Yeah.
Come full circle. Woke up in this Finnish graveyard, then went back to our hotel where we were all staying. I believe woke you up.
Yeah.
I went back to my room, but I didn't have my own bedroom. So I was we were like sharing a room. Josh very lovingly made me an entire bed next to his bed, like laid out, like got pillows, made a little sheet. I think probably as a thank you for the whole Gerald Ford Jr. setup. Weirdly, he had come home alone. That's weird.
Yeah, that's so strange.
After this inn I'd get him, made a whole bed for me, and then I fell asleep right next to it on the floor, not on the pillows in the bed that he had made. Fell asleep on the floor, and then woke up the next morning, and we were supposed to take a boat from Helsinki to Estonia.
Yep, a ferry.
And I was so... probably a lot of us were not doing great, but I feel like I was especially not doing great, and you made the very wise call to not put us on a sea voyage that next morning.
We knew you were a guy who famously couldn't handle the Disneyland cups. We were a little worried about you crossing whatever sea it would be to Tallinn, Estonia, and still never been to Estonia. I kind of low-key blame you for that. The other thing I remember,
I really wanted to go to see Estonia, but
we instead flew to Amsterdam, where Josh and I had lived for years, and I remember the other thing is we went to the airport. So now we're flying from Helsinki to Amsterdam. And the three of us get through customs, and then we look back, and you had been in line at one of the customs kiosks where you get your passport checked. And at some point, they had closed. That person had gone on break, and they'd closed that kiosk, and everybody had moved to a different line, except you couldn't process that. And so we were on the other side, and we were just standing, and Josh said he's in line at a place that doesn't have anybody at the end of the line. And we were just like, I think we could get on the plane. He would just still be there. And we had to sort of wrangle you over to a different line.
Yeah, had a bad case of the vapors.
You had the vapors plus the flux. Super flux.
Yeah.
The other thing is which I'm always impressed with, you always carried around a little book. You would write down ideas, and you showed us the page that you had written down your night sleeping in the graveyard, and it was just like a swirl. Like you had thought you had something interesting to write, and you had just written like just a doodle of a swirl before passing out on it.
I think it was the spiral and the abyss that I was looking into that I accurately drew for you.
Yeah,
pretty
fell
good.
into that vortex. And then we had a couple great days in Amsterdam, but you were in our friend's apartment just sweating through various sets of sheets.
Yeah.
In a weird sort of fever haze.
A full I had cholera or something. It was just needed to be isolated and missed the rest of the fun.
Yeah.
But hey, really worth it for that. Really worth it for that graveyard.
Hey, one thing we wanted to ask all our guests on this show, but you've kind of already answered it, which is, have you been to the Grand Canyon? Your answer is yes.
Yes.
And then our next thing is, was it worth it?
It is so worth it. First of all, I've been to the North Rim and the South Rim of the Grand Canyon, not to throw it in your faces, but
classic double rimmer.
Double rimmer, as I like to say a lot with no context. I think the cool thing too is it's a completely different experience. I remember being in the South Rim of the Grand Canyon, and it was 95 degrees and crazy hot, and it was snowing in the North Rim of the Grand Canyon. That's how much of a crazy change there is while you're there. As a kid too, I don't know if you guys ever did this or people do it, but we would always try to find license plates from all 50 states.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I do remember
when we were driving around. And Grand Canyon was one where you would knock off like you would see Alaska and Hawaii, and still I'm like, I don't know the whole Hawaii one, how that quite works, but because no one's taking the car on a boat, right?
Look, if you saw it, you saw it, bud.
I swear to God, it's a rainbow. There's no way to fake that.
When you were a kid, when you saw a license plate from a different state, did you ever wonder, do their headrests taste different?
As a connoisseur.
Like, are they spicier from, like, did you think a Louisiana license plate?
To state. You don't think it's car type. You think it's state?
I think it's state. I think a Honda from Louisiana might have a little bit more kick in the headrest.
A little kick. And that's a great plug for our sponsor, Louisiana Honda dealership.
Honda Louisiana hot sauce.
Yeah. Honda hot sauce. All right, well, that's good because Josh wants to go and I don't want to go to the Grand Canyon, but it seems like you're leaning in pretty hard to go.
It is mind-blowing. When you see the size of it, you are kind of like, it is not just a canyon. It is a grand
now, see,
canyon.
My knock on it is I feel like it's a spoiler alert. They should have just called it Canyon, and you should have got there and then found out it was Grand.
Decent canyon.
And then you're
like, no, this is
feel
better.
like you might as well have called Sixth Sense. The kid can see dead people. You know what I mean? They blew it.
I do, and which I think a lot internationally it is often called that though. When you see it, if you're watching Sixth Sense and like,
yeah, well, sure, in Czechoslovakia,
Finland.
they're not going to risk it.
And say Finland. Yeah, I think it's very, very. I think it's very, very worth it. And another thing we did that I would really recommend is we hiked down, camped in the base of the canyon, and hiked back up, which is just that also like seeing the different perspectives of it. And we went before there were all these tricked out, these newfangled things like the whole kind of glass walkway where you can go out over the canyon and look down, which so I never got to do those things, which might be cool too, but.
Yeah. Any other national parks stand out to you? Any faves among the ones that you went to?
I mean, Bryce and Zion. Scarlett and I went back and did that a couple years ago. That's fantastic. Arches National Monument. A lot of the national monuments, you think, oh, maybe it's not as fun because it's not a park; it's just a monument. But it actually is just a park, so it's also fun. And
it's just a poorly named park.
It's just a poorly named park. And then these are like. I almost feel like a loser saying them, but Yellowstone and Yosemite are mind-blowing too. And Yellowstone even has like its own sort of Grand Canyon, which is kind of cool. So you could do if you really can only do one, you can get kind of a combo.
Yeah, nice. Those all appeal to me, not to Seth.
Not to me.
Are you just Seth? Are you just not really a national parks person in general?
I think you should give it to companies. Companies should be in charge of these parks. I feel like we're leaving money on the table.
Seth, as you always say, I'm an oil man, right?
At heart, I'm an oil man.
Yeah, you have the sort of the companion piece to the PBS documentary series, America's Best Idea. In your mind, it's our worst idea.
It's called Money on the Table. It's called
America's
We're Leaving
Best
Money on the
business
Table.
opportunity.
Money on the table.
Is there someplace, Jost, you're a very well-traveled man. You just got back from the Cannes Film Festival. Had you been there before?
Oh, yes. I had been to the Cannes Lions Festival.
Okay.
Which
it's just for movies about lions?
Yeah, that one movie they made Lion, that obviously was there.
Or
Lion
anything
King.
where the lion roars in the beginning, the MGM lion. They accept those.
They say, I mean, it's really just an MGM. They just do films.
Yeah, they bought it out. Sure.
They bought it out. I've gone to that festival, so I've been there a couple times. The first time I ever went there, I landed. I'd never been in the south of France and never been to really like a festival, I don't think, in my life. And I was there to do stand up, and I was waiting for a car, and they were like, "Hey, there's no cars. There's a strike." I feel like every time I go to France, there's a strike. There's a strike, and they were like, "There's no cars because they're striking." I think it was a strike against Uber. So any private car, there was like a strike. and they were like, you can't get in. One guy got in a car, and a bunch of cab drivers like surrounded it and set it on fire. I was like, what? Wow, they really do it. They do their strikes in France, and they're like, so we don't have a car. And I was like, oh, okay. I could walk, or I could take a train or whatever's good. And they were like, no, there's a helicopter. We got a helicopter waiting for you. And I was like, oh, this is, of course, I've never been on a helicopter. I'm scared. I never wanted to be on a helicopter. I was very scared of it. But I was suddenly just like, oh, okay. All right. They were like, yeah, just get on. And I was like, okay. I kind of felt like peer pressure to get on this weird 2-seater helicopter, and got on. And I was like, hey, how's it going? And he's like, I was like, how are you doing? You know, and the guy's like, I'm not so good. I just I had this whole bachelor weekend in Amsterdam. I just kind of fucked up. Anyway, are you ready to go? And just instantly took off, like straight in the air, which I guess helicopters do.
That's the move.
Ideally, that's the good version, right? Straight in the air, like, let's go. You know, and had this like 10-minute helicopter ride to some other location there where I had to go do stand up at this festival.
Did he play was a little football played? Where was the belt when you landed?
I didn't have a belt when we took off.
Oh no.
Yeah.
But you had one when you landed.
I had one when I landed. Yes. So but that was my only other time there. But I will say the film festival, which is the festival I think people want to go to. I've told a lot of people, oh no, go for the Lions, and they're like, oh, great. The film festival is pretty It's pretty extraordinary how many people show up who just love movies. It is. Yeah. You know, the theater where Wes Anderson's movie was playing that Scarlett's in. It was 4,000 people in full black tie. People got kicked out if they were wearing a full tuxedo but like white sneakers.
Wow.
They weren't allowed in. Full black tie, and they sit it was like one of the biggest movie theaters I've ever seen, and watch this movie. They're so into it. They're applauding for all these minutes after, it's like, you know, I don't know, we got like a 7-minute standing ovation, which is 6.5 more minutes than I've ever seen a standing ovation in person.
Yeah.
You know,
you read headlines about it, but I actually imagine it must be shocking to watch it in real time.
You almost feel like you're hallucinating at some point. You're like, you've never seen people applaud for that long in unison too.
Yeah. And it doesn't seem insincere. It does seem authentic.
It does. I think part of it's the atmosphere of how wonderful we all did this experience together.
When you say in unison, do you mean that they clap in time with each other?
No.
Because that would be terrifying.
That's scary.
Actually, that is a nightmare. That is.
People dressed alike clapping in unison is real scary. That got real scary. Yeah. Wait, I lied. I do have one other thing to ask you about. I would like to know what the ferry situation is. We talked to Pete on this podcast about the Staten Island ferry and its current. You bought one, right? That's not a secret. How do you feel it's going?
I think we're a publicly traded company.
Yeah, Titanic 2. How's it going?
It's going really good. Even now, as we're putting together all these investor proposals, it still says Titanic 2. And I'm like, I think now we have to pivot. Once we're asking for money, I think we have to pivot. It is. I'm not just selling this because I am a investor in this. It is gonna be a pretty dynamite situation when we're done with this thing. I mean, not that we will have to dynamite it, put dynamite. We're not gonna have to put dynamite on it and end it. It's
tow it out to Montauk and dynamite it, and it's gonna create a great break for all the surfers.
I'm very bullish about the future of this. I do. Again, I feel like you and Pete. I feel like good things happen to you guys, and so I think this is gonna be. I don't know when, but I think one day Josh and I are going to be standing on the bow of that ferry, and we're going to be saying, "They did it. These guys did it. They tricked us onto a ferry that is going to sink into the middle of the ocean."
They tricked us, and they did it. I think it may be so long that no one remembers who we are by the time it happens, but I do think there's going to be a pretty cool thing that comes out of it, I hope, and maybe an interesting experience of a boat.
Pete was very honest with us that you're doing more of the heavy lifting than Pete is on the business side.
And now, were you guys like, no, what? No. I feel like he's doing more of the heavy lifting on the celebrity side, and I'm more the back, behind the scenes, the numbers guy.
You know a lot of famous people, but I feel like Pete's the guy opening night that probably gets like the 15 most famous people to show up. If I'm subtracting celebrities you're married to, I feel like Pete gets the top 15.
Yeah, there was the guy who was at Gatsby's parties also. Like one of his friends was there, Meyer Wolfsheim.
Oh, sure.
I'm sure some people were like, "Oh, that's Meyer Wolfsheim. He's interesting also." But they were really there to see Gatsby.
Yeah, he's our modern Gatsby. Let's be honest.
We all have to accept that. But in the end, Meyer Wolfsheim, I think turned out great, right?
Yeah, I think everybody said he was based on a good guy. He was a good guy in the book. Secret hero of Great Gatsby. We're going to let you go. Jost, what a joy. What a joy to see you.
It is such a joy to see you guys. We have had some very nice trips together, and it was nice to remember some of the...
We've left some out. We didn't even hit them all, so you might have to come back.
Hey, I will happily come back if I'm welcome back. depending on how all my Splash Mountain comments play. And how what the level of uproar in Portugal is.
Right.
We'll see.
I feel like we might be fully banned from the podcast feeds of Portugal.
I'm trying to just eliminate country by country. I mean, I feel like we pretty much knocked off Portugal and Finland, right? So
yeah, Estonia's not going to be happy that you fucked up our visit.
That's true.
Colin Jost, it's summertime, so there's no SNLs. Hopefully there'll be SNLs in the fall, but until then, I think it's Delta. At least 2 years ago, you could see Tom and Jerry. So check that out.
Yeah, if you're on a Delta flight 2 years ago, do check out Tom and Jerry. Flying to France, by the way, for the festival, the options on the movie screen, this wasn't the only two, but it was presented like it looked like they were the only two, were The Whale and Les Schtroumpfs, the Smurfs, the Smurfs in French. So it was real. It was a real...
I feel like no one was like, I feel like both these are right up my alley.
Is there enough time to watch them back to back? I guess
it's a
flip
real
back
double
and
feature.
forth. I think this Les Schtroumpfs in America it opened as the animation before The Whale, right?
Yeah.
They did like an animated short of the Smurfs and it went right into The Whale.
Right, it was the Pixar short before The Whale.
And then I put The Whale. We were like, as we were taxiing, I was like, I'll put The Whale on now. I'll see the first little. I'll start, watching The Whale now. And then it was like the first scene is him masturbating. And people are like coming up the aisle, and it looks like I just turned on to watch the scene where he's masturbating. Anyway, I thought I'd leave you guys with that.
I think we should leave everybody with that. And I love you, buddy.
All right, love you guys. It's very nice to see you.
Yeah, you too, buddy. Love you.
Driving in a rental car, Jost and his bro were getting hungry. National parks can be so far apart. They felt a grumble in their tummies. There were snacks to eat, but they didn't want them. Pretzels, carrot sticks, and chips.